Hey Scorpio, this is Seven Scorpion Tarot, and I want to welcome you to tonight's reading. So, tonight we have, I was only seeing one thing in your sign, and it's Black Moon Lilith. Uh, and apparently she's got a lot to say today because I just got my Etsy order with a devotional oil to her, and she was who was coming through in meditation. And then I rolled the dice to find out who I was reading for, and your sign came up. So, three things pointing to her today. Maybe this is a continuation of the collective reading that I did. That was a message from Lilith. So let's see. We'll get some cards. We'll do a self, shadow, and ego. And we'll kind of see where that gets us. So we'll start here in the self. So this will be what might be going on in that area, those different areas of our psyche right now, a lesson that we need to learn. Something specific in regards to those areas of the psyche potentially. I'm going to take that since the uh, cards plopped out on lesson. That's what I'm going with for this. So, Queen of Swords and the Moon in the self. Huh. The Moon is going to be something unknown, and it came out behind the Queen of Swords. And since it's in the self area of the psyche, you may need to learn how to embody the Queen of Swords, which will lead to unknown results. And this depiction of the moon card is interesting because you've got the dogs here, like looking up, scared, barking at the cat. Like, I don't know if the camera's going to pick up on the expression or expressions, but they don't seem all too terribly happy about this cat up here. And that definitely gives me Lilith vibes because she's, a being of sovereignty, of standing up for yourself and stepping into your own power. And that cat looks very powerful on the top of that fence looking down at the dogs. And even more water sign energy with the crab, this being associated to Cancer. Now, Queen of Swords, that is air energy, and very, I almost want to use the word languish, and it's got these like Americana birds on it. So it's giving me like the nautical star tattoos, like, I mean, anybody who's tatted up is not going to be in with the norm, I guess. A lot more common now, but it still has sort of that air of taboo, and especially depending on how many you have. And the Americana style definitely gives punk vibes. So coming up against the establishment, which very fitting for what's going on right now, but that doesn't feel quite right. That's why there was the lift at the end of the sentence. This feels like rejecting more intimate systems, like on a more micro scale than the macro scale of you're rejecting what's expected of you, like the way that you're supposed to act. And maybe there are some people in your orbit that are, barking that like you can't do that, or like they're scared for what that means for you of rejecting these societal norms of behavior and whatnot. And it's your life. I mean, if we look to the story of Lilith, she chose to exile herself from paradise because she was not being treated equally. And that's something to aspire to. That's something I aspire to. Of environments that are not treating me well are ones that I don't belong in, regardless of what they provide. Like, there's just no, that's blood money on me if I'm staying in an unhealthy and toxic situation, then I'm hurting myself. And of course, like, you can't always leave things immediately once you've come to that choice or that decision of this isn't working anymore. And I'm not telling anybody to, like go out there and quit their job, like break up with the person that you're dealing with. Like, you need a plan to exit those situations in your own best interest. And that's okay. Uh, don't let anybody convince you otherwise, that you need to put them and their needs before you in these instances. I mean, of course, if you have kids, that's different. But I'm talking about grown adults that like lick the boots of the shareholders, of the stakeholders, and hold the company. Now you can't see me saluting, but but like holding the the company above all else when you are the one that's not being taken care of. And you are, at the end of the day, the person who's going to be taking you into consideration. Because even though the people in either a work situation, a family situation, or a relationship, whatever that may be, they may very well, and often do, have an obligation to you that when you call them on it, they will do everything in their power to shift that back to you. Like, how dare you expect me to do my obligatory duties? And it blows my freaking mind that people are like this. Like, you can't always plan for a family. Sometimes that happens, things happen. And, but in the case of like a romantic situation or a work situation, these things were entered into voluntarily. And there were discussions up front about expectations and whatnot. And then you expect those things that were put in front of you, and it's like, how dare you? How dare you expect what I told you you would receive? I'm going to start shuffling for the shadow. And that's not an exact parallel to like what was going on with Lilith and Adam, but the premise was there, that they were made of the same material. They were the same, just different genders. That's all there was to it. And sorry, I paused on this because the Ace of Wands, that can be a bit phallic. This is the suit that you will find that expression in, um, and that was a conflict, in between Adam and Lilith, was the what was going on in the bedroom, of how that was being handled. And I don't know, I'm just trying to be vague for, keep it family friendly, right? It's a family friendly show. Uh, but this coming out in reverse, he got rejected. I think you can illustrate the metaphor yourself here. Um, but that's in the shadow, so you might be feeling rejected, even though you may be the one, and likely are the one, the way this is coming out, that is rejecting these situations and rejecting societal norms and expectations, whatever the case may be. It still feels like rejection. I've been through that many a time. Too nice is a criticism that I received many a time, which still grinds my gears. Like, trying to be considerate of the other person, and they opted to take advantage of that. That's not on me, that's on them. And I want to live in a utopia where treating people with respect and kindness is honored. Unfortunately, I live in a dystopia. With the rest of us, it's not just me, not the only person that lives here. But being in situations that you were being kind, or you were working hard, or you were doing what you could to take that other person into consideration, and then they just stomped on it, even though rejecting that situation is the right course of action, it still hurts. Because there's a lot of resentment that can build up of like, why couldn't you respect the kindness? Why did it have to be like this? I offered the carrot first. Why did you make me pull out the stick, the Ace of Wands? And I don't like having to pull out the stick. I would prefer using the carrot. Everybody makes their own choices, though. And if people don't accept my carrot in something that's supposed to be reciprocal, out comes the stick. Trying to think if this needs to be expanded on at all. Let's see. Let's get a clarifier since I'm thinking about it. What the surrounding situation might be, or who might be involved. Because this is a lesson. That was the theme we were starting with. And the shadow's got a lot of lessons in it. In that one. Seven of, this looks like swords because he's got the little claws. Going with that. Pretty sure this is the swords. I haven't used this deck in a while. So deception. Yeah, and there's 4 and 3. So I think in the Rider Waite, it's normally they've got 5 in their hands, and then they're leaving 2 swords behind. But here we're separated the 4 and the 3, so rest and heartbreak. Is someone's deception may have caused heartbreak, and then therefore the need for rest. And I don't know about you guys, but if I do have to employ the stick, If somebody's, acting a fool, you're going to need some rest after that. That's really taxing on the system. Conflict is not fun. Start shuffling for the ego, but conflict's really taxing. Uh, it takes a lot out of you, and especially if you're dealing with any sort of, like in my case, PTSD, like that gets aggravated by other just normal everyday like life situations, conflicts, interpersonal conflicts and things like that. So if you've got something underlying that could get aggravated by whatever conflict you're finding yourself in, and then therefore the need for rest and no compromises. That rest is, you're entitled to that. That does not need to be earned, regardless of if you're dealing with something underlying or not. We're humans, not machines. We require a rest. So what's going on in the ego? Because this could play out kind of ugly in the ego. Deception, reclaiming personal power, as you might swing hard to, like, if you've lacked power and then you regain it, you might swing a little too far into it. So it's kind of got to equalize. And this cat looks very unhappy. That expression, that's a pretty serious stare. Card for the ego. A lot of almosts. So maybe some doubt in the ego. Maybe you're doubting this change. The especially if it's a really significant departure of, you know, the structures that you were raised in. Like, I'm slowly becoming everything I was taught to hold disdain for, like anti-establishment, raging feminist. It's like, it's okay if you're a feminist, but not too loud. Gotta be quiet. Believe what you want inside your head. Don't tell anyone. Keep it to yourself. But the hypocrisy of, like, supporting other women and their voices was just incredible. This is looks like the 10 of Pentacles in reverse in the ego. So maybe there's a fear playing out that if you break away from established norms, you won't have great success. You won't have the happiness that you desire. And that's a false narrative. How can you even reach the 10 of Pentacles in the upright if you're not honoring the authentic self, no matter how scary that self may seem? The consequence of Lilith exiling herself from paradise was that she was demonized. That when she spoke God's true name and was exiled out into the wilderness, she became a demon, and then eventually the mother of demons. And I can only imagine the fear in that situation of, like, the literal Garden of Eden, right? Of exiting that and saying, the the Garden of Eden is not good enough, and challenging that, and the way that she was being treated in the garden, not good enough. I'm sure that there were conversations between her and Adam. I don't know if she had conversations between her and God, but of like, this will lead to ruin. You'll never be happy. You're going to be a demon. How could you be happy? Like when you could be a human in the Garden of Eden. Uh, so maybe there is some fear mongering in your orbit. You know, talked about how scared those dogs looked, and fear can manifest in a number of ways: anger, um, despair, worry, all of that. And those projections, from the unconscious can be really, really strong, and oftentimes very influenced by whatever conditioning you were subject to. And by conditioning, I just mean like the family structure that you were raised in, you know, social influences, things like that. The things that take you away from the authentic self and like chip away at that over time, or make you, bury it, put a shield around it. And the things that make you feel shame, like you might feel no shame about the decisions that you're making until they start barking. And those influences can be really strong because they can be coming from people you trust or trusted, people that you once held it, like, especially if they're parents, like as gospel, that their view was correct, that the way they viewed the world was the right way to view the world. Coming to the conclusion that that's not correct is a really, really difficult thing to reconcile with, and it's really scary. I've gone through that a lot with estrangement from my family, of, did I make the right choice? Am I making the right choice by choosing myself every day? And that answer continues to be yes, regardless of how hard it is, regardless of how lonely it can be, regardless of how angry I am about so much that will go unsaid, at least to them. I recommend therapy and support groups for sure. But that not having that conflict with them does kind of leave some things, in that unfinished bucket. And that's just where they have to stay. Because if your authentic self isn't being supported, and I'm talking about doing things that are healthy, like if it's your faith that isn't supported, if it's the things you speak up about, maybe those are supported, but they don't like you talking about it. Support, quote unquote. Uh, if you're engaging in things in a healthy way and they're not supporting you, they may not be your people. Like, we want to believe that we're supposed to have this unconditional love, from our families. And while that's true, yes, the odds of rolling the dice and landing on everybody's personality and the whole family meshes and we all agree with each other on how we feel on things, I think that's a lot lower than a lot of us want to admit, uh, you know, that depending on your situation, if you weren't born into these families, or however your family of origin is structured, would you even hang out with these people? And that's a hard question. That is a hard question to face. It's okay to ask questions. Uh, and I don't know, like when it comes to friendships and stuff too, if it's reached a point of just being obligatory, do you want to continue putting effort into that? Another hard question. But the cost here is having to suppress the authentic self. There are a few things in this life more painful than that. This is the Women of Myth deck. We'll see. I know I've been talking about Lilith, but we'll see if anybody else wants to show up. Might be a, a theme, and I'm going with theme since that's what it flipped on, and it doubles up on the moon because it's illusion. El Nadaha. I seriously doubt I'm pronouncing that correctly. Let's see. Let's get the book. Keywords: transparency, awareness, cognition. First story: El Nadaha stalks the banks of the Nile at night, looking for men to bewitch, hypnotize, and drown. Oh, sounds like La Llorona. Uh, Card meaning: this card calls out a situation with when a truth lies naked out in the open, but we deny it, call it something different, and try to convince ourselves and anyone who will listen that the truth is anything but what it is. You've put on rose-colored glasses and are tricking yourself or deceiving others. Her advice: when you pull El Nadaha, you must bring full awareness to your situation. You must be willing to look at it objectively and call it by its name. This is how you accept ownership. This is how you hold agency. This is how you come through the obstacle stronger. So, very Lilith, in terms of holding agency, but I think fits the theme really well of like, call it for what it is, like, call a spade, I think is the phrase. Uh, if people in your life are unhealthy for any reason, should they get a pass based on the title they hold? I don't think so. Because in terms of family, they're held to a higher standard than other people. Like, they're supposed to be the ones that I can count on above all else. And I'm supposed to make more exceptions for them, like lower the bar for them, like, but they're your parents. But also, and I'm their kid. Nobody ever says that. Nobody ever brings up that part. So I don't know. There's something illusionary. Maybe it's an illusion, like if you're in a situation like mine where you're on the other side of it, maybe this is the acceptance part. And maybe this is, in other situations, you're starting to see it for what it is. It just kind of depends on where you're at. Any Batman. Great for illusions. Um, a little touchy on the parental stuff. So, be mindful of what you might be dealing with. You're in the right headspace. But I love me some Batman. Uh, I like the Gotham Knights, where it's like 6 short animations by like different animation studios. Or Under the Red Hood, I think is a really, really good one. So a lot to think about here. And some self-care, some binging on Batman. And I mentioned, animated stuff. But of course, there's Michael Keaton, the best Batman, and the Christopher Nolans and whatnot, the Dark Knight trilogy. So a lot to choose from. And that's going to keep me pretty busy. And I already just saw that, was it season 2 of Andor? Has like 3 episodes out already. Like, I'm perpetually behind on things. But in conclusion, you've got this authentic self, maybe that has been hidden away for a considerable amount of time, or any amount of time, that is starting to come to the surface, and maybe some people don't like that. That's their problem, not yours. And I'm not giving you license to just go be a jerk to everybody, like, but if you are standing in your truth authentically, respectfully, whatnot, and I say respectful, with a grain of salt, just but with integrity. Maybe that's a better way to put it. Standing in the authentic self with integrity. That's gonna rub people the wrong way, because authenticity, people get shook by that, and that's good for them. Good for you too. Gets you to see how much power you really hold as the Queen of Swords, and give yourself time, whatever time you need, to recover from deception, from conflict. Rest. Rest is okay, and you're entitled to it. And don't let the naysayers pull you away from your 10 of Pentacles, because that's for you. That you, at the end of the day, are going to be the one, chomping on these treats. May as well make sure they're ones you enjoy, right? Overall, I hope this helps. I hope this resonates. And if it doesn't, I hope the next one does. Thank you so much.